This week's United Rugby Rewind to find out if Zebra will finally become a zesty. Will Benetton become brilliant? Will the enigma that is Edinburgh continue? And will Glasgow become glorious once again? All that and more coming up on this week's URC. Hello and welcome to the final pre-season preview of the United Rugby Rewind with me, Lee G. Joining me as always is the happy. I only worked this out today, gents. ABC. You are the ABC of rugby. Alan, Ben, and Kaylin. ABC. That wasn't even scheduled or anything. So evening, gents. How are you?
Good evening, Lee. How's things?
It was good, mate. Good. And I did get to the point of thinking I need to find somebody to take my place, that like David or Di or somebody with a D has got to take my place just so we could have that ABCD thing. But I gave up on that after about a couple of hours, I'll be honest. Right. So we've done Wales, we've done Ireland, we've done South Africa. So we are going to do Scotalia this week. I've tried finding a way of mashing a Glasgow accent with a Rome accent, and I'm going to be honest, it doesn't work at all.
I've got it for you. I've got it. Scotalia.
They're not natural bedfellows in terms of how the languages fit together, but yeah, it is. So it's the last of our previews, and then we go straight into kickoff this week. So if you are just listening to us and catching up with us for the first time, we will be doing another proper podcast, if you want to call it that, this week, which will be the normal kind of format. This is our preview podcast. Like I said, have a look on our timeline. You'll find all the other ones on there as well. So I'm going to kick off tonight. We're going to kick off with the bottom side from last year, which is Zebra, which, like I said to you guys before we started, I thought this is an easy one. This is going to, looking at research in Zebra, going to be easy because they're just always bottom of the pile, and everyone just accepts Zebra are going to be bottom of the pile. And then I started looking into their squad, and you start going through their squad, and you go, well, actually, yeah, there's a couple of decent players here. And then they got rid of like 15 players either through last season or after the end of last season. They only brought in 5, and they've got like a massive squad. Nearly all of the squad is under 30. They're big boys, big, hefty, mean boys. You look at the coaching setup, and there's some real quality in the coaching side. You look at the crowds they get in, and you're like, hang on a second, you put all of these things together and something's going to go off there. Do you know what I mean? They've developed a system where they bring through a lot of players through the Italian semi-pro leagues, and now they're bringing them up into the likes of Zebra and Benetton, and it's starting to pay off for them. So, yeah, when I start, I'll be absolutely honest with you. I thought I'm just going to sit there and slag them off for 5 minutes, and that'll be it. That'll be me done. I can sit back, and then we can talk about the Scottish sides. But yeah, they've got, like, who have we got now? So they got rid of, Jake Pelledri retired last year. Pierre Bruno retired last year, yeah, or got released, if you want to call it that. They're the two kind of key losses that they've got in that squad. The rest of the players, Josh Kiefer, big guy, gone back to Australia. So other than that, they pretty much held their squad together, and they brought a load of academy boys up through the system. They haven't brought in many players from outside. They've got 5 Argentinians in the squad. None of them are small. None. I you know, when you're kind of researching and you kind of go, you look at the name and you kind of go, yeah, it doesn't ring any bells. And then you look at his stats and you go, 6 foot, 16 and a half stone. Okay, yeah, he's got to be probably back row, maybe a centre or sort of thing. Scrum half. You go, what the? How does that work? Like, you know,
Games changed, Lee. The game's changed.
yeah, there used to be back in the day, back in my day, you used to be able to look at a player and go, right, okay, you're a prop, you're a second row, you're the chopsy one, you're scrum half. Life was simple in those days. Now everybody's massive, everybody's fast, everybody's fit, nobody's got a gut. It's a difficult one. So yeah, as I went through it, and like I think the key bit with this pack is they've been together for a long time. Yeah, you look at the side, but the pack in particular, that front five, has been together for 3 or 4 seasons now, and they're starting to click. So I know Ben will thank me for bringing this up, but they had a massive pre-season win against Glasgow. Now I know it's pre-season, so it's, you know, but 31-0
It
against
counts
Glasgow.
when it's Zebra. We'll just say that.
Yeah, and this was kind of my point, is the feeling around the club is actually quite positive now. When you look at the social media, who they're bringing in, you look at the coaching staff that they're bringing in. They're bringing in a lot of Eastern European guys for strength training. They're bringing in a lot of ex-athletes for fitness and things like that. You know, it's got everything they need to really kick on. And when you add in the positivity that a win against the champions, you know, when you look at the social media reaction after that win against Glasgow, you would have thought that that was, you know, a cup contest, a semi-final of the cup. That's it. Yeah, we're in the final, because the place just went nuts. They're selling more season tickets than any of the Welsh regions. Yeah, so it's going really, really well for them. And there's a little bit of me that really wants them to do that, that really wants them to kick on and start causing a ruckus, as long as it's not against the Welsh sides. As long as they kept like messing up the Scottish and the Irish sides, I'm fine with that. Just leave us alone. We're having enough of a shit time as it is. Go mess up the boys that are happy. So yeah, I mean, for me, I'm the more I look at what they've got there, the more I think that this could actually be the season where they do something. My fear for them is that they've been there before, and it's whether or not they've got the resilience to kind of maybe deal with those first couple of games that don't go their way. The first game against Cardiff is away in Cardiff. Cardiff have brought in a whole load of players and all that kind of stuff. It's a really interesting game to see if Zebra can kick on and do something. If they do, if they get off to a good start, I genuinely think that they can, you know, really grow from it. And when you think of it from the rugby kind of context, that's what we need. We need sides like Zebra and Dragons to start going and shaking up the table, you know, to not just be the boys that get a whooping every week. They need to be able to compete against Ulster, Munster, the Bulls. You know, they need to be able to compete, and they've got the players on paper to do that. I say they're big enough, they're strong enough, they're fit enough, they're fast enough. The skills are there, you know. There's a whole load of really decent players there. They've got a good mix of experience. They've got a good mix of people coming through. If it's not this season, it'll be next season or the season after, because it's primed. It's primed and it's ready to go off. Whether it does or not, but I really, really want to. I think Zebra are everyone's second side. You know, you always your team, and then if you're not Welsh, you might support the Dragons or Zebra. If you're Welsh, you support your side and Zebra. You know, and you always hope that they go and mess up somebody's fixtures for the week and all of that kind of stuff. I think Zebra are gonna start giving bloody noses out this season, and I, for one, am looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it. Yeah, it's going well. Oh, that was the other bit. Yeah, they drew as well. So there was the Glasgow game where they won. Yeah, the week before that they played INA and they drew 17-all, and that was pretty much a full strength INA side. Yeah, so they're competing. They're coming to play. They're coming to do some damage, and I'm quite looking forward to it. I really am. So that's about all of my research on Zebra. and I thank the guys at All.Rugby for that, because without that I would have just sat there and slagged them off for 5 minutes and gone this shit. But actually, yeah, I think they've got a really, really decent chance this year of kicking on and doing something. Is anybody going to disagree with me on that, guys?
No, I agree with where you're coming from, Lee. I think the only thing is, as we've said, we've kind of been here before. Young players, there's always this constant churn of talent, and that can create this kind of here we go again sense that you mentioned earlier, which is absolutely a factor. The only thing I would say is, I think what we've seen from Zebra last year, and kind of we touched on this with the Dragons in episode 1, they probably were better than the result line showed. They had a lot of games where, like, they played Munster in Musgrave Park down in Cork, Virgin Media Park, I should say, for sponsorship reasons. And like their attack really flowed that day. It was like 40 something, 20 something. It was one of those kind of games that you're not too happy with if you're a fan. But they have the fundamentals there. Is their defence at the ability that should be? Probably not. Is their scrum? Probably. They got Danilo Fischetti there, who's a brilliant scrummager on the loose side. Breakdown work probably has a little bit more to go. Again, like all the best back rows in Italy are in Benetton. If not, they're in, the Italians are in France or somewhere. So there's that. The line-out caused them a few issues last year again. But it is just creating a culture where they will pick up, maybe 2 wins a year, then 3, and picking up a scalp. If they can get another result like the one over the Sharks last year at home, I think they can kick on, because it is just about reminding yourself you can get those results. I'm not expecting 6-7 wins this season, but a big home scalp somewhere, and just keep that confidence somewhat afloat.
And that's kind of what I picked up from their social media and stuff, is there's a lot of positivity around it. You would have thought, having 5 seasons or whatever it is, finishing bottom of the league, most sides would have been pretty much down in the dumps and pretty much, right, that's it, I've had enough. Let's go and support someone else. But they're not. They're growing their supporter base. There's a lot of positivity around it. They're investing in their coaches. They're investing in the academy. They're investing in, the Zebra family, as they call it, and just bringing more and more people into the club with this common aim of not being the whooping boys. And I think if they get 2 or 3 wins in that first block, say, confidence can do strange things for people. And if they can start to build confidence, I think that they might surprise a few people. They might really surprise, and I hope it is. So anyway, that's Zebra done. So we started at the bottom. That's good. We've done the bottom side from last year.
The only way is up.
The only way is
all the way
indeed
to
up.
the top.
Let's go all the way to the top. So, Alan, you've got Glasgow this week, mate. So give us the only way up for Zebra. The only way for Zebra is up. So the only way for Glasgow is now down. Oh, what have you made of their season? And I will remind you, Zebra stuffed them 31-0. But go on, tell me how good Glasgow are going to be this season.
Oh, I think like you said, we all know they had a dream season last year. They ended up top of the table, and then they ended up winning the whole thing, which was a massive plus for Scottish rugby and a massive boost for them. They have had two preseason games this year where they've lost. One of them pretty badly, as you've mentioned, to Zebra, and the other one was to Connacht, 28-21. So preseason is what it is. It's practice. It's trying to get new systems and combinations in place. So I don't think there's too much to worry about in that regard. They've had a few players come in who are going to play a pivotal role this season. We've had Rory Sutherland, who's coming from Onay. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah. And Adam Hastings. So he's someone who's been looked at, and they've obviously got him in. The players they've lost, Ali Price, Ross Thompson, both gone to Edinburgh. Ollie Kebble to Onay as well. So they've lost a couple of players, but in these situations, what you find sometimes is that a team that wins the league, sometimes they hold on to their players. I expect them to have a good season again. I think I put them fourth in my predictions. So not something similar to what happened. Obviously, they won it last year, similar to Munster the year before. But going away to the Bulls and winning there, I think Franco Smith had something to do with that. We know he's played a pivotal part in Glasgow's successes. But I think they play very smart rugby. They don't take many risks. They are quite inventive. And I think it's only going to be really good for this season as well. So I do think they'll do quite well. I don't think they've lost any players that are going to genuine game changers. So I'm genuinely looking forward to see how they perform this year, although it's going to be a bit more difficult to win it this year, I think. But like I said, fourth place, get a home quarter-final, and then see where they can go. So they know they've already done it once before, and we know Munster did it the year before that. So it's not the end of the world not finishing top of the league. So I've got optimism for Glasgow, and I think we can all be aware that they know how to win games, and they know how to put their best foot forward in these situations. So they might not end up top again, but they're still going to finish comfortably in the top 8, I believe.
Mm. So Ben, how difficult is it as an Edinburgh fan to deal with Glasgow from last season, mate?
Not particularly bad at all, to be honest. I think the rivalry between Edinburgh and Glasgow is largely artificial. It just focuses on the cup round, the Christmas, either side of Christmas, those two games. I think most Edinburgh fans just want to see Glasgow do well and vice versa, because it strengthens the national team, because 3/4 of that team, particularly with some of the players coming back now, like Bradbury and Adam Hastings, back into the in the SRU setup, means that we want both teams to do well. I was just looking at the table. Glasgow's defence last year was incredibly mean. I think before Munster, they conceded the least amount of tries last year, only 35, and scored a lot. Glasgow's backline is incredibly scary. You look at who they've got in there: Jones, Tupelotu, Tom Jordan, Stafford Liddell, Cancelliere on one wing, Carsdale on the other. It's just an incredibly strong back line on any given day, and last year was an epitome of that. Yes, they've lost a couple of players, but they weren't pivotal players at all last season. I don't think so. Adam Hastings had a bad couple of years at Gloucester. I watched him in the final against the Sharks. Sharks kind of destroyed Gloucester that night, and Hastings didn't have his best game. I think he was a little bit Teflon, a little bit lightweight, kind of was in there when it suited him, but he doesn't really grab the game by the scruff of the neck, which he did at Glasgow before he went to Gloucester. He had his injury problems at Gloucester, similar to Bradbury at Bristol. And I can understand why they've gone back into their former sides. But I think, the difference between Glasgow and Edinburgh last year, and I'll talk about it in more detail later on, is Glasgow were just really, really efficient with their the 22, the red zone, whatever you want to call it, to take an idiom from the NFL, is that they consistently converted. Johnny Matthews, for example, 5 tries in one game last season. I can't remember if it was a cup game or a league game, but he is a machine at hooker, and it's unbelievable how strong he is through them all. And I think out of the top 5 try scorers, he was the only one that was a forward. The other 4 were backs off the top of my head, and most of them were Bulls players, I think, from when we were discussing a couple of weeks ago. So they just have sort of all angles of attack, and you saw the way they played against Munster in the semi-final. Very particular type of play, very defensive. Then against Bulls, just trying to nullify that kicking threat, and they just did it so well. And I think it's going to be very difficult to look past them this season, apart from Leinster and Munster. I think they've got the capacity to beat anybody on any day, and it doesn't matter whether it's home or away at the moment. Franco Smith just has his head screwed on. He's very monosyllabic in his interview, but you can tell there's some passion there and there's some real sort of insight into tactical analysis. And I'd quite like to have him at Edinburgh. I don't think Sean Everett's in the same class as him, and I think it's probably the main difference last year was how we coached and how we managed games. Because Edinburgh, a lot of turnovers in the 22 that resulted in tries being scored against us and losing out on try bonuses. I mean, going back to the Zebra insight, Zebra nearly beat us in Parma last year. I think it was Dave Cherry scored a very, very late try, 75th minute, to turn it from a 2-point deficit into a 5-point win. So, yeah, without going too much Edinburgh, without being my turn, I think Glasgow certainly have that.
I just want to mention as well. I just want to mention too that I'll go into more details in this game later. But if you look at their first 5 fixtures, and the fact that they are playing in the Italian Scottish division, they could come away from the first 5 or 6 games in the season. They could come really good, and then once you get into the lead of the league, like you just said, Franco Smith knows how to manage the players and how to manage their defense, and it gets really hard to break them down. So if they get a good start, it's only going to be very promising for them going forward, because they are in that Italian division, and it's similar to the Welsh division, really. If they can get a foot up over your opposition in those leagues, it does set you up for a promising boost as you go through the season.
Well, I think they only lost to us at the Shield, and that was the Duhan van der Merwe sort of worldy try, the only kind of decent try scored for Edinburgh season, to be honest. After that, he kind of went a bit pop after the Six Nations, but yeah, I think that was the only game they lost in the Shield. So it just showed, it's like we were talking about the week, wasn't it, in the group chat about strength of schedule and how it does have an impact. We see it in the NFL. That's why you get a different winner every year, and it kind of has an impact in the URC, because the teams you play at home one year, the away.
Yeah, because you are playing 8 games as well in your division, aren't you? So
exactly, win
those games and you're halfway up the table already. So there you go. Promising news for Welsh fans, hey.
They keep beating each other.
A lot harder for the Irish and the South Africans. Not quite as optimistic as a Lions supporter.
Exactly.
I think the thing is that we've said in pretty much every review that getting off to a good start is key, and I think the good thing with the URC this year is it is incredibly competitive. Even we look at the sides like Zebra and Dragons that are usually down the bottom. Even those sides have got a real opportunity to kick on. And I just think
you're right. Yeah, with it being a Lions season, I know that obviously discounts the Italian teams, but going back to some of this is coming to mind, but there's 6 or 7 Glasgow players that could walk into that Lions squad next year, I think, at least. And I think they could be one of the biggest contributors next season to that Lions squad beyond Leinster. I just have a feeling there's a lot of players there that will make it.
Yeah, no, it's fair. And I think the thing about Glasgow is, it's probably weird, you can make the same case for Glasgow, the Bulls, and Leinster, and arguably Munster as well. What people think Glasgow are is not what Glasgow are. They are not the expansive team we seen under Gregor Townsend when they first had the revival. They play a very narrow brand of rugby. It is very off ball. It is defense focused, set piece focused. One of the best mauls in the game. I would like to see how their maul adapts if or when that one-stop maul rule comes in, because that is going to change the entire picture for all the good mauling teams. But defensively, really solid. They're a nasty team to play against. I know saying this as a Munster fan might sound like, well, you'd think that, but they play like they hate everyone. I think that's one of their biggest strengths. They really do.
Scotland's a fortress as well. Like, no one seems to win there. And Manny Libbert epitomised that.
Did anyone win there last year? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I don't think they've lost there for nearly 2 years now. It's getting on a bit.
Just Munster, I think, in the last 2 seasons, which speaks to it. Like, the home games are so important. We talked about that before. I do think for Glasgow, though, because they're going to go into this season with the target on their back, couldn't think of that word for a second, because they go into the season with the target on their back, how are they going to cope with that? Playing the style of rugby that they do, it is very lethargic, I suppose you could say, but at the same time, it is very risk averse. You'd imagine they'd be able to step up to it, but I wouldn't be overly sure. We'll get into it a bit later on. I have Glasgow a bit further down in my predictions than the rest of you do. But how they deal with it is going to be massive. Teams have had a while now to look at them. And honestly, I don't know if Glasgow will be able to back it up, because there is that thing with them before. We've seen it. I think we discussed it before, actually. The last time they won it, they were kind of thereabouts. They never looked like winning it again for about 5 years. That brings pressure. And how are they going to rise to that? Franco Smith's a great head coach, but that is a mentality thing that you could probably attest to Scottish rugby more so than Glasgow rugby. And I think that's going to be a really interesting under the radar storyline.
I think Jones and Tupelotti, when they click, I think there's very few centre pairings better than those in the URC. I think it's hard to look. Ringrose had names gone off. Henshaw, at Leinster clear, but I think after that, and they obviously they not played that much together for Leinster the last couple of seasons with different, injury and maybe just like minute management. But those two, Tupelotti and Jones, just incredible. Jones had his time at Glasgow. He went off, went to Harlequins, went to Bayonne. I think it didn't really work out for him. Came back. He went out the Scotland setup, came back in the Scotland setup, and now those two together, I think, incredibly strong centre pairing, and it works for Scotland. It works for Glasgow. And when they click, it's difficult to see a better pairing than them at the moment in Northern Hemisphere rugby, I think.
But you see it a lot with Scottish and Welsh players, to be honest, where they have a really good season or a couple of decent seasons at home, and then the checkbooks are opened and off they go, and they never quite seem to settle. They never seem to deliver away from home, and then they come back home. And it's like a player reborn sort of a thing, isn't it?
Well, you could. There's probably a good at least half a dozen at the top of my head. I mean, apart from Greg Laidlaw, who made a very good career at Gloucester and then went off to Claremont and did very, very well there. Bradbury, Hastings, Van der Merwe, Sutherland. Yeah, there's a good few that have gone, and then Hogg to a point. I mean, he's less we say about Stuart Hogg, the better at the moment. I think.
Exactly.
But,
yeah.
Come out of retirement.
Gray would be a good example of one who went and has done well.
But he's been injured for so long, and now he's left, hasn't he? So he's not there. And Richie Gray's come back and had a rich renaissance, as they've been saying, as opposed to renaissance. Like he's now back in the Scotland team after being 37 with still peroxide blonde hair. I don't know how he managed to pull it off at that age. But again, just someone that seems to be, have been reborn once they came back into the, he's in the top 14 for 6 or 7 seasons at 3 different clubs. Never really got a foothold in that lock position, and now he's come back to Glasgow and seems to be a world beater again. So. Yeah, you're right. It seems to be that there is a travelling issue with Scottish players leaving the SRU, but then we need them to leave in order to make space for the players to come through. I'd say Kinghorn, shoe in for the Lions squad next year, shoe in for lots of different awards, whether he's, up for the Rugby World Rugby Player of the Year. I know his name was mentioned by Caelan a couple of weeks ago, but that's someone who has benefited from growing. He went at the right time because he was plateauing at Edinburgh because they couldn't decide where to play him. He's gone to Toulouse now. I think last weekend, the opening weekend, 2 ridiculous try assists. So. I'm happy he's gone because it gives another space because he wasn't gonna he plateaued in Scotland. He had to go, and Toulouse was definitely the right place for him to go. And look at him, he's up there with Intermac, Dupont and Ramos as their key back now. So that's a really good thing for Scottish rugby that he's gone and made a name for himself. But I think he's an exception rather than the rule at the moment, and it's quite difficult to see that being solved at the moment because we only got two professional sides, and there's no desire for a third one. They keep talking about trying to have one sort of in the central belt or further north past Perth towards Aberdeen and Dundee, but it seems to be rumours more than anything concrete. So yeah, there needs to be that sort of way out to go to somewhere else to kind of hone your skills and play with maybe just different competition.
The Scottish Rugby Union should just buy Newcastle. That's what they should do. They should just buy Newcastle, and then it puts all the rumours to bed. And then the WRU can buy Gloucester, which we virtually fund anyway. And then, all the merger stuff, which we will discuss on our other pod later, but all of that just disappears out the window because we'll own half of it anyway. So, Glasgow are looking good for another season. Fingers crossed for the rest of us, not quite so good as last year. So if you are listening to us and thinking, actually, these guys kind of know what they're talking about, welcome. Thank you. That's very good of you.
Very kind.
So do like us on social media and subscribe on YouTube because it does make a massive difference to what we're doing and how we can do it. And you're very welcome to interact with us, send us messages, nice ones, we hope. That we'll happily have a chat with you on social media. So let us move on to that kind of mid-table and kind of, are they overachieving or have they always kind of been that good and just underachieved before? So Caelan, give us the rundown on Benetton, my friend.
Gladly. I'll gladly do Benetton. No, look, I think last year was a statement of intent. And I think, we mentioned that Edinburgh Benetton game before, not only on here, but, in the group. I think what we seen there was, oh, I am after disconnecting my microphone. What we seen there was a statement of intent that they could do, that they could kick on, and get the result when they needed to. You know, that was so important for them. The fact that they went into round 18 and they took on Benetton, or they took on Edinburgh, they got the result, they got the win on home soil. Making the Stadio di Manigo a fortress is massive for them. There's no doubt about that. It has been somewhat in years gone by, but it's not to be on and on as well, because picking up away wins was something they really struggled with. This year, there is two hot marquee signings. I think it's fair to say Lewis Lina and Matt Gallagher. They look like the guys that were going to be, I suppose, the ones that you sell tickets with. I suppose you want to put it that way. And they're brilliant talents. Line in particular, what a start to his Italian career that he made back in the Six Nations with that performance against Scotland. I know Ben doesn't need reminding of that one, but he was excellent that day. Gallagher, really serviceable fullback. Very unlucky. I think if anyone looks at his career since he left Saracens, they'd say, oh, clearly not rated. Was starting to break into the Munster team under Johan van Graan and dislocated his shoulder actually in a game where he was probably man of the match up to that point. Gets injured again when he comes back, leaves Munster after a year, maybe 2 years without having done much, goes to Bath, and Bath just seen him as a second choice option, but was still very good there. So he's one to look out for. The only thing is, and we mentioned this in the context of Scottish rugby, when it comes to players leaving, Federico Zani, Giacomo Nicotera, Gianmarco Lucchesi, Henry Stowers, Dewalt Duvenag, Sam Hidalgo Klein, bit of a blast in the past name there, and Eduardo Padovani. There's a lot of talent there. A lot of really good players to leave. Now, I believe their squad profile is really good. A lot of players in that kind of, you know, you look at the likes of Isakor's 24, Canone's 23, Zuliani's 24, Lamaro's 26, Negri's only 30. Like in that bracket, they have a lot of real talent. They got some experience there, and I think that backline will cause people problems next year. Likely it'll be Garbisi alongside either Manga or Albanos. You'd have Brex and Menicello. Menicello needs no introduction in terms of what
Absolutely.
he can do.
Monster.
Got the likes of Fekitoa there in reserve, and then Mendy, Lina, Ritave, Adogru, Gallagher, Rhino Smith. If that was the backline for a Premiership team or for another URC team, we would rave about them for weeks. So much talent there. Connacht fans would love how they're all speedy outside backs. Everyone else would love how they score tries, and Rhino Smith can kick drop goals as well. Do I see them really kicking on this year? I don't know. I'll get into a bit later. I project them finishing 7th this season, which is exactly where they finished last year. But I think it's about just making inroads again. It's a very positive time to be in Italian rugby. It's a time where you definitely wouldn't like to close the door on them. I'll just put it that way and squeeze that one in there. But I'm really happy with where Benetton are at right now, and I think they can have a really good season.
Do you think they suffer from having too many internationals? Yeah, we've kind of said this before, where you overstack your side with like superstars, and then they all disappear at key periods of the year, and then you kind of you put them on the park as often as you can, so some of the guys that you're then going to rely on maybe don't get the game time, and you're almost running two sides within the same camp, if you know what I mean. Then 15 of them disappear to international duty, and you go start with like the second 15 sort of a thing. Do you think that they've suffered with? Do you think they should send some international players over to Zebra just so we can kind of spread it all out? Because I'm fully on board with the Zebra family now. I'm part of the Zebra family. I could do, yeah, let's have a couple of the Benetton boys over, and we'll live with that sort of a thing.
I think it's a fair point, isn't it? Because, like, not that they should send players over, because the Italian rugby model is very different to, say, the Irish or the Welsh, for instance, because Benetton are the rich club and Zebra are the Italian rugby club. Zebra are the Dragons in this instance, and Benetton are essentially Leinster. And you'd never see Leinster sending a player to the Dragons out of goodwill. They don't send a player out of goodwill anyways, but that's beside the point. The point on Six Nations window in particular, I think, is really good because February 15th, they've Ulster at home. Then they've got Connacht away on the 1st of March, and they've got Edinburgh away 22nd of March, the week after the Six Nations finishes. I don't need to remind you how important those 3 games are because realistically, okay, I rate Ulster very highly and I got into this last week. That's 3 teams that are going to be around their level where they're not going to have their internationals. Last year, when they didn't have their internationals, they went to the RDS, were in the game for 60 minutes, then got blown out of the water. That's what happens when that top layer goes, that top 10, 15 players goes, and they start to lose games in the third quarter or fourth quarter of a game. It's a real concern because they are games that 2 home games and a trip to Galway that they would probably fancy if it was at any other time of the season. It looks tricky. So I think that's a very fair point. And then after that, they have to go to South Africa. They have to go to Lions and Stormers. So I think there is a chance their season kind of slides away there, but they have to get off to a fast start again. We have to see them top 6 at Christmas, I think, after the second Zebra game, if we can really see them as playoff team.
From a South African perspective, the thing that changed the view on the URC and the European teams was the Rainbow Cup, where Benetton went to the Bull, where it came to Loftus and thrashed them. It opened up like all of the South African eyes. I think they won by like 30 points or something. And the South African teams actually don't like playing them because of that, and because they do play a brand of rugby, which is, it's normally, I mean, it's not very wet in Italy, is it? So it's more akin to a South African like turf, and the crowds are quite emotional, so you get those similarities. And I agree with your point about the internationals going away, because we could argue that was the Sharks' problem last year as well, is that they all in internationals were getting breaks throughout the season and didn't have to play games, so that was where the problem came in for them. I think Benetton, without their players, are still, I think, like mid-table. Maybe I've put them, I think, 9th, I think, this year. And that's only because of improvements to other teams in the division. But I can guarantee you that Benetton have a lot of respect in South Africa, and it's not enjoyable playing them. If you are going to play them at home, and then play them at altitude, because they do beat, and they do play very well against the South African teams. So, yeah.
And it's something that they kind of need to take that form on to other teams. And I think I say it again, it's going to be, I think, probably the most competitive URC that we've seen ever. I think you're going to get to the end of the season, and we're going to go, who can make the top 8? And it's going to be, well, any one of those 16 sides is in a position where, with 2 games to go, they might be able to make the top 8, or they might drop out of the top 8.
What was it last season? Was it like the top in the lot with 1 week, with 1 round to go? It was something, wasn't there, like the top 11? Yeah. 4 sides could still make it. So that already says everything you need to know, doesn't it? Like, it's important to these teams, and they are trying, and everyone's got a chance.
I think it's the try bonus matters more. I think every season, I think you could last season it adversely affected Edinburgh to the extent that we were 16 points behind Glasgow there, and we only lost 2 more. We won 11, they won 13. So it's all about.
Benetton will probably have a bit of a leg up because they can hit you and they can score.
Yeah.
As funny as you mentioned the top 8 and how Nara came down, I reminded the Connacht game that they played. They had Connacht at home in the league. Connacht rotated a small bit. They'd no Finlay Beedham and Bundyaki, I think it was, or one of the two, and they'd no Mac Hansen, who was obviously injured. And Benetton did not play well. And this is just after 6 Nations. They did not play well. On comes the likes of Alessandro Isakor. He scores the game-winning try. But I think that was the moment in my head that you thought, do you know what? These are the games that Benetton were losing by 10 points 2 years ago. And that's what we mean when we talk about Zebra a few minutes ago. They don't have to win every game. They have to start getting experience of getting wins where they should be losing the game. Benetton showed that last year. They showed it with that Edinburgh game as well. They beat Ulster the season before when Ulster were in a low ebb, and they could have easily just thought Ulster will win. They did so well to turn them over. I really like Benetton this season. I have the same concerns as the lads, absolutely. It's going to be a dogfight in that middle third of the table, but I think there's more reasons to be positive than to be negative about Benetton.
Yeah, I think it's see, the more we talk about this, the more you're going, oh, I just want to kick off now.
It's exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't wait for Friday.
Yeah. And well, even Friday, Zebra at Cardiff, and there's a little bit of me going like, yeah, I'm Welsh. I'm looking forward to seeing Cardiff play. They've brought some new players in, but then there's this other bit of me going like, I'd really like to see Zebra shake some people up, and it's going to be like that every week now. It's going to be there's something to just kind of look at, and what is the reason to watch this league every single week, and it's not just one game. It's going to be consistent all through the season, and it's just going to give people headaches. I mean, I wouldn't want to be a bookie trying to take odds on this season, because
I wouldn't like to be doing a predictor league every week and posting the results on social media.
Have we signed up for that? Have we?
Yeah.
Someone hasn't. I think we're still on 3. I'd say it's Lee. I've no idea, but I'd say it's Lee. I'd say he's trying to chicken out.
Lee set it up and then didn't sign up. Yeah.
No, I did. I'm straight in it. Yeah.
I think so, okay.
So just to put some frame around what we're talking about. We're going to record this podcast tonight, and then we're going to go straight on and we're going to record our predictions podcast, which will be out on Wednesday. But we've also set up a prediction league. So there's one for us so that we don't have to keep track of what we say every week. But then there's one for supporters as well. So that is on our social media. So if you want to join us, if you think we're talking a load of crap, which will be, I mean, there's 4 of us here. So the chances are there's 75% of people going, yeah, no, I disagree with that. That's a load of rubbish. So if you think we're talking crap, you can do the predictor league and prove us just how wrong we are. Because I used to do the predictor league on Rap, and it got really, really serious the last couple of weeks. Like, when people get to that bit, they go, I think you'll find in the rules, it says such and such and such. And I'm like, I make the rules up on a weekly basis. And so what I say kind of goes. So that's why we don't do that one anymore. So if anybody wants to join us on our predictor league, they're very welcome. It is on our social media, and we'll be happy to have you on that. So let us move on. Finally, let's move on finally to Edinburgh, Ben. Overperformed the last couple of seasons, really, mate. Go on, all yours.
So 3 things that I picked out last season that were problems: no backup 10, losing Kinghorn, and inconsistent centre pairing. And all 3 of those things. 2 of those things have been solved over the summer. Matt Scott coming back from Leicester. Again, someone who's kind of journeyed around, been between Scotland, went to England, been back and forth. He's now back in Edinburgh. Sioni's brother, Mosesi, coming in. I don't know what to expect from him yet, but if he's anything like his brother and he looks identical, he will be a force next season, because I think we struggled at centre last year, whether it was Mark Bennett and James Lang or Matt Curry. The 3 of them just didn't seem to know what to do off the first phase when it was coming out from Ben Healy out to the backs. Wes Houston had a couple of injuries again last year, absolutely world-class fullback. And I've seen him, when he starts and when he gets into a run of form, he's unplayable at that fullback sort of wing position. Darcy, who I've loved ever since he was a kid, and the reason why is my cousin had the chance to play rugby with him at under 20s when, this is about 8-9 years ago, and said, Ben, look out for this lad. He's unbelievably good already. And this is when he was 17 or 18, walked into the Edinburgh side. And he scores tries for fun. First couple of games in a Scotland shirt, scoring twice at Twickenham. And I think we got battered off on that day. Probably the last time we had a big defeat off England. It was a 61-21 game back in 2018 off the top of my head. 17. Obviously we've won 4 out of the 5 since, 4 out of the 6 since then. Obviously that 31-all draw that will go down in history as a bit of a game of 2 halves, so to speak. But Darcy Graham being back and fit again is like a new signing, because the last 2 seasons he's had problems with his hip, he's had problems with his knee, he's had problems with his shoulder. He's probably one of the best wingers in the URC. I'd say him, James Lowe, from the Northern Hemisphere teams, those are the two best wingers in the league, I think. Darcy Graham's unplayable on a day. He's put the size of him. He is a great tackler as well. He'll put people down. He's a little bit like Colby. He'll put people down that are twice his height. He's just got this amazing low center of gravity that just seems to mean that he can just push through people. He's incredibly fast. He's not lost any of his pace. Replacing VP now with Paul Hill from Northampton. I think that's quite a good shout. I think he's 9 years younger. VP now, absolute club legend. Been at Edinburgh for God knows how long, 12, 13 years. Became an honorary Scot during that period of time. Many caps in the front row. Obviously, 38 years old is an incredible age to play to, but obviously he had to be replaced, and last season was the right time for him to go. Not lost any players really. Bradbury for Matter was a like-for-like swap, because they've obviously switched clubs, but Matter got injured last week and he's going out till November, so probably dodged a bullet with that, because he was class on his day for Edinburgh, but again, just a few injuries here and there. I think the first 4 fixtures are pretty key to how the rest of the season is going to go. Leinster, a trip to South Africa, and then the Stormers at home, followed by Cardiff and Ospreys. So, depending on whether we hit the ground running against Leinster on Friday, is going to dictate how the opening 6 go before the autumn internationals. There's a possibility we don't win any of those first 4 games if the game against Leinster doesn't go well. But I'm hopeful on a Friday night against Leinster, first game up, it's probably the best time of the season to play them, I think. We had a very good pre-season friendly against Gloucester on Friday night, came back and won. I looked at both sides, and the 250, we changed to 15 at half time. So it was a 15 and then replaced by a completely new 15. I'm hopeful that they've been playing those 15s against each other the last 2 weeks just to get a really good sort of level of competitiveness and affinity and rapport together, because it wasn't there last year. And I think this is where the difference between Sean Everett and Franco Smith is. I think Franco Smith's a far more astute tactician than Sean Everett. Everett's going to be, if Edinburgh finish outside the top 8 this year, Everett will go, because Mike Blair fell into the same trap. He started really well, and then we had that top 4, top 5 finish, I think, in his first season, and the season after that just fell apart. And I think Everett, if he doesn't start as well as he did last season, because we did start well, and then just fell away after Christmas. I think we only won 3 games from Christmas on from the top of my head. One against Glasgow, then we obviously had that tight loss to Munster at home, and then after that, obviously, just the disaster of Benetton. I think he's going to be on thin ice. I don't want to sound too dramatic, but he's a coach that's come over with some pedigree, and I just don't think we've seen the best out of that Edinburgh side, considering the number of internationals there. And some of those players will want to go on that Lions tour next year. There's a couple of players in there that could go. Duhan will probably go again. Darcy Graham could quite easily go on the tour. I think he's probably the right age now to tour with the Lions. But I think just having that extra competitiveness with Ross Thompson behind Ben Healy at 10. Healy played too many minutes last year. I think we all saw that from the end of the season. I don't think it takes rocket science to work out that he played too much, and it definitely affected his quality. That second half against Benetton, he didn't really. I just think he was knackered. I think it was just fatigue. I think he only missed 20 minutes of the entire season. You can't have that as a 10 if you want to pin in the top 8. They need to have that sort of replenishment. And he obviously, went to the Six Nations side. Didn't play that often because obviously he's behind Finn Russell, but he's still in that side and still having to train every week and didn't really get a break. And he's young.
That was the irony, wasn't it? Because he was probably not saying he was playing better than Finn last year, but he was playing better than the amount of minutes he got in the Six Nations, where he got a couple of blood sub minutes. I think it was at the end of the game, but they didn't touch the ball. And then the juxtaposition of Edinburgh really needed someone behind him, because he had come from Munster where he was second choice or third choice the entire season, and he looked, as you said, absolutely out on his feet.
Yeah, I just don't think he was ready for it. And how was he, 23, 24? He's definitely late 90s.
24 going on 25.
So he would have been 23 last season. I just think it was a lot to ask of him. And he is he seems quite introverted. You don't see him bellowing around the pitch like you maybe see Sexton did, or perhaps Hastings would, or a number of
someone
10s.
like Jack Crowley, who he was behind at Munster. He's a much quieter guy, but he's definitely in the I'll let my work do the talking. He's very accurate. He'll make most of his passes. He'll make a couple of tackles. I think he was one of the highest percentage kickers in the league last year.
Over 80%, I think.
So, he's definitely, I'll do it. But I echo all of your concerns about Edinburgh. I think we've discussed them kind of in dribs and drabs across the few episodes. They are a good team. but there's a lot of pressure on them as well. Very different to Glasgow in that pressure, absolutely. They need to show it. They just need to show it. And I'm really interested to see how that Leinster game goes, because Leinster will have a few internationals. I think Jack Conan looks set to play that one. Ross Byrne looks set to play that one. For instance, Jefferson Gibson Park potentially could be back in time for it as well. But Edinburgh, most of the, like they're not going to be without a lot of players who would have went on that tour in the summer with Scotland. So they're going to be basically full gun.
We
They're
need
at
an
home.
80-minute game. That's the problem. And I think the only 80-minute game I saw us play last year was the Kingspan when we beat Ulster. That was the only proper 80-minute performance for Edinburgh we won, and that was the first time we won in Belfast. And I think just full stop in Ireland for a number of years, and we didn't see enough of that. And the Benetton game just epitomised that. So it's tough being an Edinburgh fan, because there is, when you look at the squad, there's a wealth of talent in there, wealth of internationals. It's just getting them to click. Much like if our centre pairing clicks like the Glasgow centre pairing clicked last season, then it will win more games away, because our away form was woeful last season, and try bonuses were woeful. Lowest try bonuses in the league. I think we had 3 off the top of my head where we scored 4 more tries.
Do you think that with the wingers like they have, they almost are obliged to try and get the ball out to them before they earn the right to, and then maybe you're saying that they had what you just said is, if that's right, then they've got the lowest try. You would expect them with those wingers to use them properly and more effectively, like Scotland do. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's a good question. I think Darcy and Duhan. Darcy's more astute with this play. Duhan is I just think he's a hard player to manage, because I think he just goes off his own steam. He'll come in, he'll go outside. Defensively, not always the best. Passing, again, not always the best. But 100-meter sprint, he's always going to go burn you on the outside. I just think sometimes he's a bit one-dimensional. And I think last season, because of the injuries, I don't like playing with injuries, because you have to have squad depth there, because people are going to get injured throughout the season, no matter whether you like it or not, because of just the sheer physicality of the sport. But we're relying on Jake Henry, who is very, very young, went on the South Africa tour. Now he's been loaned out to Coventry. Chris Dean, who's a 12/13, was on the wing for a bit. And he's now been released because he was one of those players, really nice guy, had a chance to speak to him at Cardiff last year when they all walked off the pitch in one of our very few away wins last year. But he wasn't URC standard anymore, and they were relying on him as some sort of utility back. Kinghorn going, I understand, but we had to let him go. And the RSIU probably went, look, let Blair go. Let's get someone in there instead. But then injuries decimated us after there. So it's tricky. Hopefully, I mean, I'm going to say 6th this season, but it requires a few moving pieces to click into place and stay there, and the consistency has to follow.
How long has Sean Everett been there now? 3 years.
This is his 2nd season, I think, off the top of my head. Okay. Yeah, so it's not long, but
he was with the Sharks when they got hammered by Leinster, I think, and then went to E. Not exactly the greatest ending to his time with the Sharks, but I think it's about 2 years or 3 years.
I think we did struggle to get a head coach in. I don't know if he was necessarily first choice, but there weren't very many people to choose from, and I think it was a difficult time. There wasn't many people on the managerial merry-go-round available that would be suitable. Mike Blair, to be fair, I think he just realised he wasn't a head coach. He wanted to go back to being, scrum coach, attack coach, backs coach, whichever. And I think he went off to Japan. And again, it takes a lot of humility to be able to come out and say that and go, I don't think I'm good enough at this. And he did say that in as many words. And then just thought, I'm going to have to go. And then obviously give Edinburgh a chance to get a proper head coach in. But Sean Everett really needs to kick that squad on, because looking at the people we brought in and the people that we've lost, there's a squad there that's very, very strong, and it's full of internationals. Ali Price, maybe won't be in the Scotland team for much longer, because they'll be looking more at George Horn at 9 as a starter. But the players that we lost and him coming in, Scott Steele didn't play a single game last season when we brought him in, had a hip problem, then had a back problem, then he retired from his injury. So a little bit of bad luck with some of the signings the season before, but there's some really steady hands there. It just needs that consistency, and it was very, very frustrating to watch. The Munster game in particular, we choked up a couple of tries, and that's the difference between top 8 and finishing 11th, where we did at the end of the day. But I'll finish on a slightly jovial point. I don't know if anyone's seen the Edinburgh shirts this season, but the home shirt is almost identical to last season's shirt, and the away shirt, which is the sort of tangerine number, is almost identical to the one from either 2 or 3 seasons ago that I've already got. So this is the first season in about 6-7 years I'm not buying either Edinburgh shirt, because no one's going to be able to tell the difference. And it brings me on to a sort of slightly more substantive point, which is why are we releasing kits every single season? I don't know if there's any value anymore, especially when you see like, if you were to get shirts, it's 160 quid, £80 for a shirt per each shirt. It's an outrageous amount of money for a piece of material that you're going to wear. You know, it's not gym wear. It's something you either wear when weather's a bit damp or you actually go into the game. But I don't really understand why they're having to make these little twerks to the shirt in order to make it look new for the following season.
I think
I do
Munster
think
had the same shirt for like 2 or 3 years, didn't they? Last season's shirt.
Munster change every 2 years pretty
Yeah.
consistently. I think Adidas one of the brands that they're not going to change unless, you know, they probably have it in the contract. It's every 2 years, because I think La Rochelle change every 2 years as well, but they alternate which shirts they change or whatever. But it's so true. Like, there's just such an overkill of jersey change and brands
Especially the
taking
European
over.
jerseys, when you start including those as well.
Yeah, and like European jerseys are not necessary. And I particularly hate the trend of European jerseys. Bath wearing red, for instance, was the one that got me. Like, Bath are blue, Gloucester, your rivals, are red. If Munster's primary European kit was blue, I wouldn't be happy. Now they're wearing kind of a scarlety colour this year. It's okay. It's not ideal, but it's okay. But I know myself and Ben will be nagging at you, Lee, to let us do a jersey pod at some stage. But it's just such a pain. And I like Edinburgh's jersey this year. I won't lie, but it is very similar to last year. Very.
And one other quick point I'd is I'd be interested to see the economics behind it. How much are Macron spending to produce these kits, and how many people are actually buying them, and also the cost of the designing, because obviously there's a design team that'll have to sit there and go, "We'll trick you on this year, lads." You know, like, how on earth do we make it slightly different to last year? I think this year they went for the Seven Hills kind of thing, which Edinburgh does have the Seven Hills, but we're not known for it though. That's the thing. It's not known for it's known for its castle. Like, it's not known for the hills. The Arthur Seat's stunning when you go up there, but beyond that, it seems slightly contrived this year. That sort of link between the city and that, it's never really been something that's been brought up before. So it feels like they're just looking for something in order to change the shirt and justify it. That's how I feel about it anyway.
Just finally on that, I think it does depend on the contract. From what I've heard about, like, the different things that goes into it, some brands will be very much, oh, we'll do this, we'll give you 3 jerseys in 4 years or whatever, and we'll change a bit more consistently, and we'll try and market it as, say, market to yourself or maybe to your kids or whatever, you know, depending on what their reach is. But it depends. And like, where you kind of see the issue sometimes is when there's exclusivity deals and it'll only be sold through one place, which I know is a big thing here in Ireland. Lifestyle Sports sell most of the jerseys, the only place to buy them. I think that's the big one as well. And then obviously you have the price point, which is ridiculous. If you're going to do it every year, we need to stop this. The prices of £100, €100 for club shirts, because it's ridiculous. And you mentioned you can't wear them. I've had to close the window about 3 times here because I'm sitting beside it. I could not wear a rugby jersey right now. It is too warm. I don't know how people think they're something you can wear around the place. You don't. I wear them for a match and that's it.
Well, I think the cost of shirts are going up by a third on average. I think pre-cost of living crisis, where you go and bought Ukraine, and I'm going to get politics involved again, but obviously the 2022 invasion of Ukraine by Russia, is that shirts were retailing for about £60-65 then. So it's a massive increase, and people just go, it's not different enough for me this season. So I'll be very interested to see the sales of that home and away top this year, because Edinburgh do go all out with the marketing, you know, the Instagram.
In South Africa, we have the jersey, and then you have a t-shirt version, which looks exactly the same, except it's like costs a third of the price, and it literally, like, you would wear it to the gym and stuff, but it looks, because of the heat, you wouldn't wear a jersey in the stands. So, you know, because these Macron jerseys, the fit and the material is really thick, and then you go in South Africa and you've got like these, they're like literally like running shirts, so they're much cooler, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
That's the way to go. Too many rugby jerseys, and I'm looking at you, Leinster and Bath and Bristol, with the hoops on them, and like, let's be real. Rugby players and rugby fans are not people who should be wearing hoops. You know, let's get back to basics. GA jerseys here in Ireland are a lovely loose fit. You can wear them any time of the year. I'm telling you, myself and Ben could get a good hour out of this topic if you really wanted us to, Lee. Like, but
I was gonna say we'll probably touch on shirts when we do our first pre-season. But I think we'll see what shirts actually come out, because there are still a couple of sides that haven't. Scarlets haven't announced. Yeah, Scarlets haven't announced their change top yet.
It's late, isn't it? Yeah.
Stormers, Dragons, and Zebra, I think, are the three that haven't announced a new one.
Yeah.
And the Lions potentially.
I think the Lions
could
are
be on a
probably
2-year.
Yeah.
Well, what I will say on it, and I've said this for a long time, and to give it some context, okay, so I did in university, I did economics, and I've always worked in business all my life. I've played, I've coached, I've been admin, I've been secretary, I've been chairman of clubs. I've done all sorts of stuff. And the bit that people get annoyed at is shirts. Wherever you go, it's shirts that annoy people. People get excited about them, but they also get annoyed about them. The biggest money maker in international sport is the NFL. Yeah. And the NFL has a red shirt, a blue shirt, a white shirt, and I think a couple of people have an orange shirt. And your change,
you have to have one dark and one light.
Yeah, your change shirt is always white. Yeah, unless your main shirt is white, in which case your change shirt is black. End of. And there's no design on it. There's literally the shirt and the badge and a name. And the rest of the merchandise, when you go on holiday anywhere in America, North America, South America, Brazil, Mexico, wherever you go, there's NFL merchandise everywhere. I'm not saying it's all legal. There may be a chance there are a couple of guys in Mexico going, yeah, this is San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, that's legal. Yeah, off you go. But do you know what I mean? It's everywhere. It's the merchandise around it. And you can do that because you've got the stability of the shirt and the logo. Yeah. And all of the merchandise goes around that. So instead of looking at the shirt as the money maker, the shirt needs to be the building on which the merchandise sits. Because you can change your merchandise constantly and people will buy it. Birthday parties, Christmas, every time you visit the club shop, you buy a pen, you buy a pencil, you'll buy a pencil case, you'll buy a scarf, you'll buy a hat. It's the merchandise around it. If you know that that's your shirt for the next 10 years or whatever, the club can then merchandise around it. That's where the money is. That's where the massive amount of money is. If you know you've got to spend 100 quid at the start of every season, you aren't going to buy all the merchandise, because if you buy a new shirt, then you need to buy a new pen, a new pencil case, a new backpack. Okay, when I was small, I was a Liverpool football supporter, so I literally had everything in the bedroom: the pajamas, the curtains,
duvet cover,
the duvet cover, the towel, everything.
Boot
because
bag, whatever it was.
They just had the red shirt with a white stripe, and that was it. So we will talk more about shirts and all of that, but we'll probably leave it until after the first week, and then we'll talk about it, because we'll actually have a range of shirts to talk about. And people will have forgotten that we've just spent 10 minutes talking about it now. And that's that's a good thing. Right. Okay. So we're at the end of Scotalia. So we're going to go around the table once more, and we're just going to give our sides, see where we think our sides are going to finish in the league. Now, this gets quite confusing because, like I said, we've already done our prediction leagues that we're going to talk about in another podcast after this. It'll be out later in the week. And I've forgotten where I predicted Zebra were going to finish in that league. So there's
the Sharks, apparently.
Well, that's not difficult, mate. Let's be honest. But so there's a very strong chance that when I say I think Zebra are probably going to come 11th, that when I publish my table later, that may change. Okay, but I'm going to say I think if Zebra get off to a flyer, if they get a couple of wins in that first block, I don't think they're the whooping boys anymore. And I think this is the start of something pretty special. And if it's not this year, it'll be next year. But I'm going to go Zebra in 11th, and I'm going to stick to that, and I'm going to fight for it. Al, where are you going to put Glasgow this year, mate?
I'm going to go with 4th. I think they won't be able to finish top like last season, but I think they're pretty safe to finish 4th. I think they've got a good game plan, low attrition. I'm going to play a base to really lock that in. So I think home quarter final, but 4th, yeah.
4th, okay. Caelan, Benetton?
I have Benetton 7th, I think I said. That's why I said yesterday. I think from a Europe C perspective, I kind of hope that they've been off Europe and they go full ho on the URC. I think they can. Obviously, as we said earlier, I have reservations around certain times of the year. You look at that that Six Nations window, things like that. But the only way is up with Benetton Rugby. I'm really happy with them. And hopefully, maybe when we do this show this time next year, we might be talking about Benetton for top 4, maybe. We don't know. It's all to come. We might even be here in a year's time, but sure, look, we don't know. We could be talking about Benetton being in Division 2 of the URC Premiership. We don't know.
Oh, God, see, and somebody's going to... Well, they're going to watch this and get to that bit and go, right, give me with my keyboard, go on.
Getting the engagement. I'd just like to say on the record while I'm here, Benetton would probably finish top 4 in the Premiership, and I will leave it at that.
Okay, I'll give you Caelan's private email address after if anybody wants to argue it. Let's finish up then with Edinburgh. Ben, where do you think Edinburgh are going to finish, mate?
Cautiously optimistic, injury-free season, 6th, and then we'll lose in a away quarter final because it will no doubt be in South Africa.
Fantastic. There you go. See, that's how you do it, Caelan. Yeah, that's how you do it.
It's a Sunday nightly. What do you expect?
Right, gents, that is our pre-season previews all done. I said the more we sit and we talk about this, the more this season just feels like it's going to be awesome. It's just going to be a fantastic watch from game 1 right the way to game 100 and whatever it is at the end of it. I'm really looking forward to it. By the time this pod comes out, we will be 5 days away from kickoff. There will be another pod out Wednesday morning as well, where we will preview all of the games on Friday and Saturday of this week. We will pick out our games of the week, and we will probably give you a couple of predictions, unless Caelan wants to start arguing with some English Premiership people.
Let me at them. Let me at them, mate.
I'm going to start calling you Scrappy Doo, mate. So, join us for that one, gents. It's been absolutely fantastic.